There are two special right triangles that we're going to look at today. The first special right triangle is a 45-45-90 triangle. What a 45-45-90 triangle means is that you have a 90-degree angle in your triangle. That's what makes it a right triangle. And you also have two 45-degree angles in that triangle as well. Since there are two angles that are equal in a triangle, you also know that there are two sides that are equal in the triangle. It's the sides that are across from the equal angles that are also congruent. So this side is congruent to this side. In a 45-45-90 triangle, the side across from the 90-degree angle is your hypotenuse. That actually is true for any right triangle. And then the sides across from the 45 are each your legs of the hypotenuse of the 45-45-90 triangle. The rule for 45-45-90 triangle is that if you are given one of the legs, you can take the leg and multiply it by root 2 to get the hypotenuse. So for example, if I know that this is one of my legs of my right triangle, okay, because this is the hypotenuse, this side across from the 90. I know two sides are equal, which makes this angle and this angle equal. They both have to be 45 degrees. That makes this the other leg of my triangle, so that makes this measure 2. And then to get to your hypotenuse, you take your leg, one of the legs since they're both the same, and multiply by square root of 2 to get the hypotenuse, so 2 root 2. The second example, here's my 90-degree angle. Here are my two equal angles, which are both 45. Okay, so again, this is my leg, which makes this the same measure because both legs are equal. And then you're going to take one of the legs, multiply by root 2 to get the hypotenuse. This ends up being 5 root 4. The square root of 4 is 2. So it's 5 times 2, which is 10. So the length of the hypotenuse is 10. The harder problems exist when they give you the hypotenuse and ask you to work backwards. Instead of multiplying by root 2 to get the hypotenuse, they give you the hypotenuse and you have to divide by root 2 to get back to a leg. So 4 root 2 right now is equal to my hypotenuse. And if I need to get back to the leg, normally what I would do is I would start from the leg and multiply by root 2 to get this number. So since I'm working backwards, I have to divide by root 2 to get back to the leg that I originally started with. Okay, 4 root 2 over 2, well, root 2 over root 2 is 1, which gives you 4. So that tells me that each of my legs had to have been 4. And if you think about it, now that you have the leg, in order to get the hypotenuse, you multiply by root 2 to get this side. So 4 times root 2, which makes sense that this is the hypotenuse. But what if your hypotenuse didn't have a root 2 attached to it already? Because that makes it a lot easier. What if it was just a whole number? Okay, so still the same concept. You know that 5 is supposed to be equal to your leg times root 2. Okay, now to solve for the leg, I'm going to divide by root 2. That leaves me as my leg is 5 over root 2. However, you can't have a square root in the denominator, so you have to do something that's called rationalizing the denominator. Okay, so rewrite 5 over root 2. To get rid of this square root in the denominator, if you multiply it by itself, then the number underneath the square root is the number that comes out. But you can't just multiply the bottom by root 2, you also have to multiply the top by root 2. So on the top, in the numerator, you'll get 5 root 2. And then in the denominator, you'll get root 2 times root 2, which is root 4. but the square root of 4 is 2. So that's how the square root goes away. So you're left with 5 root 2 over 2. That is going to be the length of each of your legs. Those are 45, 45, 90 triangles. The second special right triangle is called a 30, 60, 90 triangle. Like before, you have a 90-degree angle, which across from this, again, is your hypotenuse, across from the 90-degree angle. Now this time you have two angles that are 30 and 60, not 45 and 45. So that means that your two legs are no longer going to be equal. So let's say, for instance, this is my 30-degree angle and this is my 60-degree angle. Across from the 30-degree angle is going to be your shorter or short leg. This is the smallest angle in the triangle, which means this is the smallest side. This is a leg of your triangle, so this is the shorter leg. That means across from the 60-degree angle, this side is your long leg. Okay, so now we have our short leg, our long leg, and our hypotenuse. The relationship between the short leg is if you take the short leg and you multiply that by root 3, you will get your long leg. So let's say our short leg is x for the time being. To get the long leg, you're going to take the short leg and multiply by root 3. So you got x, which is the short leg, x times root 3 will give you your long leg. And then to get your hypotenuse, you're going to take your short leg, which is x, and multiply by 2. So if you have the short leg, it's easy to find these other two, the hypotenuse and the long leg. You take the short leg, you multiply by root 3 to get the long leg, and then you take the short leg and you multiply by 2 to get the hypotenuse. So this example over here, here's my 30-degree angle. That means this is my 60-degree angle. That also means that across the 30-degree angle, this is my short leg. So if you have your short leg, to get the long leg, you take the short leg and you multiply by root 3. So now we have the long leg. To get the hypotenuse, which is the leg across from the 90-degree angle, you take your short leg, which is 2, and you multiply by 2 to get 4. Okay, let's take a look at one that might be a little bit harder. So again, you have a 30, 60, 90 triangle. If that's my 30-degree angle, this has to be my 60. So the 3 root 3 is again my short leg. So to get my long leg, I'm going to take 3 root 3, multiply by root 3, which is 3 root 9. Root 9 is 3. 3 times 3 is equal to 9. So my long leg is 9. My short leg is 3 root 3. And then to get the hypotenuse, you take your short leg, which is 3 root 3, and multiply by 2, which leaves you with 6 root 3. So it's easy when you have the short leg, because then you're just multiplying by two different numbers to get the long leg and the hypotenuse. It's harder if they give you the long leg. So this looks like the same triangle as this one. However, what's different is that this is where the 30-degree angle was before. Now we have a 60-degree angle here. So that means across from the 60, this is now my long leg. Alright, which makes this angle 30 degrees and this my short leg. So it's easy when you have the short leg, because you multiply by root 3 to get this, and then you multiply by 2 to get the hypotenuse. So what you need to do is you need to take the long leg and work backwards to figure out what your short leg is, so then you can multiply by 2 to get the hypotenuse. So your long leg is 5 root 3. Okay, and that is equal to the short leg times root 3. Well, since I'm looking for the short leg, if I divide both sides by root 3, okay, I get 5 root 3 over 3. Root 3 over 3 is 1, so I'm left with my short leg as 5. Now that I have the easy leg, you take the short leg and multiply by 2 to get the hypotenuse. Okay, but this problem was a little bit easier because the long leg had already included root 3 with it. Let's look at this example where, again, this is my long leg because it's across from the 60, which doesn't have a radical involved with it. So I know that 5 should be equal to the short leg multiplied by radical 3. So if I'm looking for the short leg, I'm going to divide both sides again by root 3. So I'm left with 5 divided by root 3 as the short leg. But you can't have this square root in the denominator, so you need to rationalize like before. You multiply by root 3 over root 3. You're left with 5 root 3 over 3. So that tells me that my short leg is 5 root 3 over 3. So now I have the easy leg. You take the short leg and you multiply by 2 to get your hypotenuse. So I'm going to be multiplying by 2 over 1, okay, to get this hypotenuse, which is going to give me 10 root 3 over 3. Okay, the only time you touch the number underneath the square root is if you're dealing with another square root. Alright, so that's a 30, 60, 90 triangle. To just recap real quick, for 45, 45, 90 triangle, okay, you have two sides that are equal, and you have your hypotenuse. You take one of the legs and multiply by root 2 to get the hypotenuse. If you have the hypotenuse, you're going to divide by root 2 to get back to the leg. But don't forget to rationalize your denominator. For a 30, 60, 90 triangle, the side across from the 30-degree angle is your short leg. The side across from the 60-degree angle is your long leg. And then a side across from the 90-degree angle is your hypotenuse. You take your short leg, you multiply by root 3 to get your long leg, and then you take your short leg and multiply by 2 to get your hypotenuse. If they give you the long leg, like this example here, you're going to work backwards to find the short leg by dividing by root 3, and then again, don't forget to rationalize, and then you take the short leg, multiply by 2 to get the hypotenuse. There is another scenario that they could give you where they give you the hypotenuse of the triangle. All you would have to do is work backwards from the hypotenuse to divide by 2 to get the short leg, and then you get the short leg and you multiply by root 3 to get the long leg.